I'm fascinated and also annoyed because when you're growing up in the culture, when I was growing up, all I wanted to do was be American, especially growing up in Lexington. I wanted people to call me Lisa. For some reason, people, thought Ayser was too exotic. And I, just kind of wanted to blend in as much as possible. I didn't want to be Iraqi, especially because I thought for me, being Iraqi meant all these restrictions and, you couldn't date and blah, 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 blah. And then, so that's been the theme of a lot of things that I've written. The book and everything is just kind of this sort of this family imposed rules that I kind of, I always joked that we left a fascist regime in Iraq and then my family instilled one in our home, just to make us feel comfortable. I joke, but look, immigrant parents, they have it really difficult and they're just trying to get along as well. But yeah, when it came to this, taking this idea of this Iraqi wedding, and I was briefly married, and though we didn't do all the pomp and circumstance part of it, the idea of the wedding being for the mother was very much, I was very, very aware of that to the point where my fiance, my mother was going to throw a party, and she lives in Austin, and she was going to throw a party, and I live in Los Angeles, and I said, "Oh, cool, let me check with him and see if he can come." And she goes, "Oh, it doesn't matter. He's not important. It's just, you know." And so it became it's that thing, and it's always been, and since the movies come out, it's always been this. I've talked to other cultures where they've said, "Oh, it's the same thing. It's that the wedding is for the mom." And it's really about the mom having a party. And so I thought this idea of when you have this amazing celebration and pomp and circumstance and things like that, but then it drowns out the heart of what you really want. That's something that's always been fascinating, and I definitely I was a rom-com gal, and all of them, When Harry Met Sally, Notting Hill, all of the ones. And the thing that I was noticing, I think subconsciously, is that they didn't, they never looked like me. I was always my type was always the sidekick kind of thing. And then as I got older, then, and it, things became in the media became more representative of actually what was happening in the world around us and reflective. You started to see that. And so, then there was My Big Fat Greek Wedding and things like that. But I've always wanted to do a traditional rom-com. So this was written as a feature. And then we made this as a proof of concept, but that could also stand on its own. And the biggest thing for me one of the reasons I wanted to do the short is to do the dance sequence, because if you've ever been to any sort of Arabic wedding, or well, yeah, any Arabic wedding or any sort of wedding, that's of a different culture, they always have that dance. And it's just like a line dance. It's very easy to pick up, except for me. I cannot pick it up. And I think again, that also played into it. I thought, well, I've never been able to just get out there and freely dance. I'm going to make a film about it. And but it's always been my favorite thing, the music and everything, and just how the joy. And I mean, some of these people, when you see these, if you've seen these videos on YouTube of the Depka, so I wanted to bring that into it as well. I wanted to do this kind of celebratory dance, scene that you see a lot of times in weddings or some sort of celebration. I had come out to film school when I left Lexington. I'd come out to film school to be a filmmaker, and then I kind of fell in, as you do, to the paying job that was actually just creative enough. And I was an editor, or I am an editor, and it was for what's now becoming. It was behind the scenes sort of stuff, and now it's becoming docu-series and I was cutting promos, and now it's kind of docu-series and things like that. And so I was making films in a sense. And so I wasn't really pulled to go and make my own things for the longest time. And so for years, I just kind of focused on doing the work that I was paid to do, which was I got to work on some fantastic projects, Chicago, and then more recently worked on Shogun. When I went freelance, strictly freelance, I worked on Shogun. We won an Emmy for that, and Pose. And so, just being exposed to these uh, communities that I would not have been able to be exposed to if had I just decided I was going to be a documentary filmmaker and make these on my own. And so kind of, yes, within the studio system. And then realized halfway through that I did come out here to make my own projects. What am I doing? So I started writing. And then again, like I said, I'm an editor by day, my day job. And so you're sitting in front of a computer. And as a writer, what are you doing? You're sitting in front of your computer. I kind of got comfortable. I didn't want to deal with the whole rigmarole and all of the things that you've heard about the politics and the clawing and all of that kind of thing. And I just thought, I don't want to deal with the egos. I'm just going to sit and do this. And so when I wrote the feature script, My So-Called Iraqi Wedding, it wasn't my intention to direct it. I was going to just hand it off and have somebody direct it that would still be in line with my vision. We just thought, why are we waiting for someone to give us permission to do this? And at this time, also, there was this more push for seeing more diverse voices. And we thought, well, what are we doing? Like, we're not, if I just hand this off to someone else, sure, they'll probably do a good job, but I know the story. So why, I know the story the most, right? So we decided to just do it ourselves. And so we raised, we sort of self-funded it, but we also crowdfunded and hired people and decided to make this short that would then stand alone but also serve as a proof of concept. When we left Iraq, we came to Lexington specifically because there was an Arabic contingent that we knew. And so a lot of them are not, they don't live there anymore. They've moved away. But there's still, you have the community that knows the community that knows the community. So there's a small community that I know and that know me. And so it's kind of an honor to bring this film and have them sit and watch it in the theater. And so I'm hoping I just do them right. The thing with Iraqi audiences, you get into the nuance, right? So when you're presenting to a non-Iraqi audience or when you're presenting to a non-Arabic audience, you don't get into the very specific things that, well, wait a minute, this doesn't happen or that doesn't happen. And I think I did enough research with my mother and talking to other Iraqi women and daughters and things like that about how it works. I think the first and foremost with anything that I do is the authenticity. I want people to whether they're Iraqi or from a different culture to say, okay, that feels real. And that's the biggest thing is authenticity. I've been about that with all of my work. So I think the biggest compliment from an Iraqi audience specifically would be, wow, that felt like my so-and-so, my aunt, or, my second cousin's blah, blah, blah wedding. So that would be good. That would be great. And then also for them to be entertained. You want people to, you're doing this we're making movies and things like that, films to entertain people. So that's what I would like. And then for people who are maybe not familiar with the culture, just to kind of, for two things, to sort of enlighten and show with the specificity that it's very universal. Because I've had a lot of people, I've had men from, I've a friend of mine who's from Croatia who said, oh, that's so interesting because when I got married, my mother had the same, she let it slip, oh, my wedding, and then I didn't think that happened with sons. I knew it happened with daughters, and I didn't think it happened outside. Well, maybe I was probably certain that it did happen outside of the Iraqi culture, the Arabic culture, but it was just it's been cool to see that response.
You want to look like a bride or the vampire? Kim Kardashian, she wish she had a mother like me.
I think just really go where your heart, my friend always says, go where the love is. you know? And in this industry, it's like, everybody's slamming doors and we don't know, no, we're not doing this with you. Instead of focusing on that, and it's really hard not to, just go where the love is. So go where the person does say yes. Go where somebody says, "Hey, I get you. I like," because it's so subjective. It's so, and that's the other thing is I can't tell people don't take it personally because I definitely do. It's art, it's, creativity, it's coming from you. So, but just try to be as true as you can. Share your lived experience because especially now that's very valuable. Don't try to make a movie that some has been made before. See if you can make your version of that. See if you can tell your story, your version of that story.